Recording is in progress. So that means we've started.
Yeah.
Cell phones are off. Recording's in progress. Our maiden voyage of office hours has left the shore. Hey, welcome everybody. This is John Arms and Dave Meyer, my co-host in Office Hours. And our job today is to open the aperture on what the world is like in the fractional economy, which also means the small business economy, because fractional is people who are independent and the businesses they serve. And it's interesting, Dave, the last data that I saw on the number of small businesses that are out there, I'm going to give you some numbers.
Yeah, hit me.
30 million small businesses representing, are you ready for this? $12 trillion to our GDP.
Yep.
It's not a small market.
It's the driver.
It's not a small market, is it?
Yeah, not at all.
But we'd like to thank everybody for joining. And this is a call-in show. Although in the world we live in today, Dave and I, it's a Zoom-in show. Is this the world's first Zoom-in on-air show?
Well, it's certainly my first Zoom-in on-air show. I don't know if the rest of the world has done it before, but I think we're going to be good. I do see that we have 5 folks on already, John. And nice. Since this is office hours, I think we should go through and just give a couple of the rules of the game as we get going.
Sure.
This is going to happen every week. We're off for a couple of weeks during the holiday season. So next week we are on. The following 2 weeks we are off for Christmas and New Year's. And then we're back at it. And we're just going to go until we get voted off the island. But if you do have a question during today's event, there are 3 ways you can do so. You can either log a chat, you can pop something into Q&A, or you can raise your hand and we will turn on your audio so that you can just ask us the question. This is really designed to be almost like a call-in show. And we do best, and I think it's funnest for everybody involved if you actually get a chance to really talk. So please don't be shy as we go through. John, I think as we were going through this, the first 15 minutes is usually going to be presentation. And we're going to have a luminary or a guest a lot of times. Sometimes
you're today's luminary.
I think so. And so as we go through, I think what we wanted to talk about, just kind of CRM, right? Like how to set up a business system to run your biz. Okay.
Yeah. That I got to tell you, that has been such a point of frustration for the small business world for so many years.
Yeah.
And our hope is today we can settle some of that frustration down because it is different. And it's one of, 8 billion topics we'll cover. It's not an easy thing for small businesses. And if you take small businesses and say, hey, we're this much of the population, and then you take fractional executives who are also small businesses, you got millions of bodies who need to get the CRM thing right. And by and large, it's not easy. So Dave, let me start by asking you, can you break down CRM for the part of the population that doesn't work in a 200 or 2,000 person firm and kind of get down to the street level here?
Yeah, there's so much that goes into CRM. And if you're not familiar with the topic or the concepts, it's customer relationship management. And it's basically the system upon which you hang all of the connections that you have that make up your business. So if you have been tracking all of your clients and customers and prospects and networking partners in either just your email, which a lot of fractionals in particular do, or if you have a Excel sheet that you're tracking everything in, you already have a CRM. It's just that you have one that's kind of ad hoc and duct tape and baling wire together, right? Anytime you don't have a central hub, you risk the real likelihood that that you're just going to drop balls. And so CRM is designed to collect everything that you do. So I am, full disclosure, a HubSpot guy. And that doesn't mean that I'm an employee of HubSpot, but I'm so into the technology that I am a speaker and a trainer for the HubSpot community. I also do the same thing for Google, but for today, we're talking about CRM. So I'm on the road a lot, showing people how to use CRM and marketing and sales automation software and all the other things that you can do inside of HubSpot. So CRM then is simply where you put everything. And I'm going to use HubSpot as my example. I might screen share if we get some interest in that, just to kind of share what it looks like, but we don't need to do a demo as much as we need to kind of share why you should do it.
Yeah. And why you should do it as a small business.
Yeah.
Which before you dig in there, I do want to, and as a means of journalistic integrity here is, as you know, Dave, I actually am not easy on the CRM world. I love a lot of them. I dislike a lot of them. There's, I think, 4,000 different CRM techs out there. And my feeling, and as I defend the Voyageur community and advocate for their success, there are you had mentioned HubSpot. HubSpot is very, very good. What CRM as an industry gets wrong, in my HMO, is CRM has yet to figure out, as an industry, it has yet to figure out how it really applies to the fractional professional.
Yeah.
And how it applies to businesses, let's say under 50 million, just to have a number of, and just to say smaller size businesses. Now we can argue over that. We're not here to fight over it really, but we're here to like illuminate if that is you as a fractional pro. If you are either new to CRM or smaller, we want to make it bite size for you. So as you know, in the Voyageur, homework and tools, we actually have a bite size, snack size CRM. That's, like you said, it's a spreadsheet. And so I think the how you approach it and what your mental state is with CRM is maybe if you can sort of pick that apart a little bit, because tools are tools, but where your brain is at it really, really matters. And I tell you, I talk to people and man, you say things like CRM or ERP or all that sort of corporate language. It's like, oh man, it's like the last time I did that, we had 5 meetings over 5 weeks, and I was more frustrated at the end of 5 weeks than I was at the first. This might be a salesperson or something like that. So I'm going to challenge you, like, make it easy, Dave. Tell us how it can be easy. I know you have the answer, but
oh yeah,
how's that?
It's really fun. We already have a bunch of chats in here, John, and David Shriner-Cahn has actually left me a voicemail and is trying to get onto the call as well. So I might mute in a minute and see if I can help him if he needs.
Our special guest today.
Another super special guest. So if he's able to join us, we'll bring him on and let's see what happens there. But if you have access to the chat pane, we've got a bunch of comments already coming in. Jan says she's on the beginning of her fractional journey and eager to listen and learn. Thanks, Jan, and welcome. Melissa, fractional HR consultant, she's going to be joining us as a guest chatter on an upcoming event. So welcome. And we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. So Jan actually asked, can we talk about ACT as a CRM tool as well? And of course, yes, we can talk about that.
Let's go in order.
So first, John, you had asked me specifically about CRM as a baseline, especially for fractionals. What you need is some system to track and keep track of all of the connections that you have. Now, what's useful and interesting about, or what's specifically helpful or a big challenge for fractionals is you probably have 3 or 4 real clients. And if you're a fractional CMO, you might be doing marketing for several of your clients. And so it's kind of, what was that movie with Inception? So it's like you kind of put yourself in right on top of things.
All these dimensions.
Inside of HubSpot, for example, or most fully formed CRMs, you can have different, what do they even call them? Pipelines. And so you can host a pipeline for each of your clients inside of the CRM. So you would have a pipeline for customer A, a pipeline for customer B, and then you're doing all of the deals and all the contacts and all the connections inside of that. And then you can track all of those in there. So that's a smart way to do this, to keep all of your life sane. Prior to using HubSpot, I was using,
were you using Zoho or what?
Zoho, yes, I was using Zoho. And it's kind of like it can do absolutely everything. It's kind of like building blocks where you just plug everything together. The trick with it is that it's really not integrated. It's just that you can do everything with it. You can the thing that you kind of get with Zoho is you get the ability to type one URL, but then you're logging into 5 or 6 or 10 different systems.
Mm-hmm.
Don't necessarily really talk to each other.
Yeah.
So
Ooh, ouch. That
I was
already my brain is starting to explode.
yeah, I was spending a ton of my time just logging in and
Yeah.
trying to, enter in information by hand and
Yeah.
push stuff back and forth. Hey, David, how are you? Welcome.
Hey, everybody. We've got, we're going to take a pause for a minute to our listening audience, and Molly and Jan and everybody. We're going to get to your questions for sure, but we're going to take a moment here and welcome our special guest today, David Shriner-Cahn, who is from the East Coast of the United States, where he's not getting the snow that we're getting here in the Midwest, as I call the Central Coast. And David Shriner-Cahn, he's the host of Smashing the Plateau. And like myself and others, he has taken on the mantle of helping people get into this world we call fractional and helping them succeed and learn what's there, turn that economy in their favor. And quite honestly, I've had some good conversations with David over the last month or two. And sometimes I think, David, our best thing is we're just cheerleaders and we're just supporting people that are exploring this. So welcome, David, and we're glad to have you on Office Hours.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Dave.
Thank you, guys.
It's great to have you here. Are you ready for that? We were trying to decide if this is the first ever Zoom in on air show. I know there's on air radio show, but is this the first Zoom in show? We'll find out. So, David, could you share with our listeners? We got quite a few in the chat here. Who you are and what you do and how you help the world.
Sure. So I was an employee for the first 28 years of my career. And then in 2006, I started a single person consulting business. It has evolved into other things. And at this point, I would agree with you, John. I feel like primarily a cheerleader, because we help consultants and coaches build their business following a late career job loss so they can do what they love and get paid what they're worth.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been doing this now. David, you've been at this for how long now since you left your last thing?
15 years.
15 years. And tell everybody a little bit like, okay, if there's one thing you got to know about this space, this is what you need to know. On top of 15 years of knowledge, I bet you've got some nuggets there that are pretty helpful.
Perseverance.
Tell me more.
We're all enamored of breakthroughs that we notice. And reality is, I have yet to see a breakthrough that has actually happened overnight. Breakthroughs typically happen after hundreds or probably thousands of tiny steps and pivots. Thomas Edison is credited with creation of the light bulb that came to market. And the stories are that he tried 10,000 that didn't work before he got one that actually was successful and came to market. It takes a lot of perseverance. And I've certainly seen this in my business.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned I've been podcasting. Well, I've been podcasting for 7 years. We've been putting out episodes every week for 7 years. That's a lot of consistency and a lot of perseverance. And have I ever wondered, why am I doing this every single week for all these years? Yeah, of course. Some weeks it's like there's some great conversations with great guests, or I get good feedback from the audience. Other weeks it's like, well, why did I invite this person to come on my show? And what have they added that's valuable to my audience? Sometimes I get people on that all they want to do is sell, which is not what our listeners want. They want to learn. Mm-hmm. Everybody has something to sell, but the reality is if you educate people and they're interested in learning more, they will come to you. That's a much better way to sell than just to be kind of blatant, hitting people over the head. But those kinds of things happen. There are, weeks when I send out lots of emails that I think are useful to people, and I hear nothing in return. So it's like, but then there are other weeks when I send something out that I think, oh, this is like, it took me 2 minutes to write this. It's something I, think about frequently, and somebody said, oh, this was the right email at the right time. One of them I sent out recently was about the power of making sure that you're having a conversation with the decision maker when you're in a sales process. And for any of us that have spent years running a business, where one of the things as a business owner you're always selling, you know that the decision maker is where it's at. And if you spend time speaking to other people in the hierarchy, it may not result in a sale. Excuse me. So, it was really gratifying to know that I touched somebody and was really helpful at that point.
Perseverance through the fractional lens is an interesting concept, isn't it? When you think about, I think everything you do in your professional life requires perseverance if you're going to succeed. The question, I think the difference in the fractional world is on whose behalf are you persevering? Are you persevering for a large company that, might forget you the day after they let you go? Or are you persevering on your own behalf? And I think the story's told for fractionals when you say it's who you're persevering for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this is a really good reminder, David. Thank you. As we embark on our very first episode, reminding us to maybe persevere and stick with it. That might be one of the best pieces of advice we could have gotten for today. So thank you.
When people ask me about my advice for podcasting, and this is my advice for any kind of content creation, whether it's an audio podcast, a video show like this, when you're blogging, posting on social media, consistency, frequency, and quality. And in that order: consistency, frequency, quality. People get really hung up on the quality. And if you're not embarrassed by your first episode, you waited too long to start. So if you do this every single week for the next 5 years, and you have these recorded, after 5 years, go back and watch this one again. And hopefully you'll be embarrassed because it meant that you didn't wait too long to start it.
Right on. I think we're good. We're good on that.
That's a great point, David. Experimentation is key. And as I help people enter the fractional world and they join Voyageur, sign up for Smashing the Plateau, which we all encourage people to do, is there seems to be somewhat of a hesitance for a lot of people to do the first thing, to take the first jump. This, if you're waiting for it to be right, it'll never happen. And do you have either one of you, Dave or David? I just realized we have two Daves here, so I'm gonna have to deal with that for the rest of the show. But have any thoughts on how do you get? It doesn't matter the first step. The key is taking the step. I'd love either of you to share and maybe give some thoughts of advice and encouragement to those that are on the outside looking in and just haven't taken that first step. Dave, you can go first.
I can go first. Just get started.
Go for it.
You got to get it going. I would say two things: get it going, but always have a plan B, because the reality is plan A is rarely going to work out the way you think. And this is true when you have a job, if you're an employee, or you have a business and you're an entrepreneur. Always have a plan B. And this is what I tell employees when they're negotiating for a raise, or there are always issues that come up in your company where you wonder, am I in the right job? Am I doing the right thing? If you have a plan B, if whatever you're struggling with isn't going to work out the way you hope, what's your alternative? It helps you negotiate, because you know that there's a point beyond which you shouldn't compromise.
Sure.
And if you do need to say no to something, if you have plan B, you're ready to say yes to plan B. So the same thing is true. It's really important. Out. Yeah, it's so important for your self-confidence, your emotional fortitude, and it will help you do better in plan A until you decide that plan A isn't going to work and you have to go to plan B.
It reminds me, the perseverance and just take the first step. Take it as something you can come back and look at later and have a good laugh. And I'm reminded of, I started as an advertising copywriter in this industry decades and decades ago. And I look back at the first ads I wrote and, oh my God, it's embarrassing. Those were the first things I created. I just took the first step. And, but specific to our topic here, of take the first step, do the first thing, have a plan. Dave Meyer, maybe you can shed some light on that, because one of the side subjects we're talking about today is how to sell yourself as a fractional. And we're hoping to get some insight on how to actually deploy a CRM as part of the support for that. Mr. Meyer, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I'll start by doing a mini story, and I do want to remind everybody that this is absolutely intended as a call-in. So if you want, you can go into and click on yourself and raise your hands. If you want to ask a question, you can log that in chat, or you can put that in Q&A. So we're going to keep track of all of those, and then we can unmute you if you raise your hand or ask to be unmuted in chat, and we'll take care of it, and then we can chat. When I started BusyWeb full-time in 2008. Now I started at 99 as a hobby, but then in 2008 I took it full-time. And I took what David's saying and I really made that my forefront. And I said, you know what? I've had the opportunity to build something as a backstop, and now I can move forward. So I had a couple of clients. I could always go back into the corporate world and run marketing and do things kind of from the corporate perspective, but it was really time. And Tim Ferriss is a guy that I like a lot. My wife rolls her eyes every time I mention him because I was very, very big in the fandom world for a while, but he does what he calls fear setting exercises. And so do something a little bit out of your comfort zone often. Maybe it's daily, maybe it's weekly, but go to a coffee shop and ask for a discount. Like, hey, can you give me 10 cents off that cup of coffee? Go to a Starbucks and try it. You'd be surprised. They're probably going to take it, right? But it gets you into the mindset of always looking for a little bit more than you think that you deserve. And so that's how I start. And in CRM, you're trying to pull everything together and keep track of all the relationships that you're making. And so a lot of different tools. Someone asked about ACT, Jan, I believe. All of the tools that I've had experience with, it's more important to start using them and using them regularly than it is to have the perfect tool. With HubSpot, I can tie my emails together so that every email that I send either creates a new record in the CRM for that person if it's someone I've never interacted with, or it keeps track of my entire relationship with that person as I'm moving forward. And I can also track my calls. I don't have to worry about when the last time I talked to that person was. And especially for fractionals, you're keeping a lot of plates spinning. So again, you can set up different dimensions, different groups for each of your worlds that you're managing. And you can keep track of all of it and set yourself tasks and just keep yourself going. So it's important to have support. And some of that support is in networking. Some of that support is via a tool like a CRM. And some of that support is just knowing that you can do it and that you can push forward. So that's kind of where I'll at least start with this. Man,
but the important thing, you mentioned something really important, Dave, which is to track what's important.
Right on. Yeah. And Shawn has raised his hand. So Shawn, I'm going to allow you to talk. Feel free to chime on in. And there you are.
Okay. I clicked on the unmute. So hi, Dave. Hi, David. And hi, John.
Hi, Shawn.
Hey, Shawn.
Hi, how you guys doing? So my question is related, and I'm using what John Arms suggested, the Excel spreadsheet. And I've got about, I think, 1,500 entries. I took everything from LinkedIn there. So it's a lot. And I kind of went to a different Excel spreadsheet, and I kind of lost updates on contact who I had sent thank you notes to. And the spreadsheet works, but it's just as you have repetitive contacts, I'm going to contact this person 8 times and keep track. It's more and more columns, and it's really just a nightmare to manage. I've actually got accounts on both MailChimp and HubSpot. And I want to go HubSpot. And I think, Dave, I followed your piece on HubSpot, and I've picked that over Pipedrive or some of the other ones. But my question really is, I want to start the email campaigns. I have MailChimp. Should I start by putting everything in HubSpot and then tie HubSpot to MailChimp? Or should I get MailChimp up and running and then try to bring HubSpot online?
It depends on where you want to go. And so we have a lot of clients that have a mailing program, but then they also have HubSpot. And if you have a very large list, that can be helpful. But if you have a relatively small list, let's say under 1,000 people, there's no reason not to just use HubSpot as your mailer as well, because HubSpot can do all of those emails. You get up to 1,000 people, and you can send to those 1,000 people up to 5 times. So you really get 5,000 emails inside of HubSpot. So you probably don't need MailChimp unless you have some other specific need that only MailChimp can do. So I hope.
Dave, is that in the free version? That all comes free with HubSpot, right?
Yep, free version. And then if you want to unbrand the HubSpot experience, if you want to have your logo, your business identity, then you're going to want to pay for the starter suite. And that's $50 a month for website if you want it, marketing software, including 2,000 emails at 5 times or so, 10,000 total, and then sales automation and tracking software as well, all built in. So it's really, this wasn't around a year ago. They just created this starter suite in the past year, and it's really made the small business owner a ton more leverage versus just trying to, again, duct tape and billing wire together. There's no reason to have MailChimp alongside of HubSpot when the entire system can work for you all in one spot.
That's good advice. Shawn, let's ask, because you're here, I know Shawn a little bit, but Shawn he's a practicing fractional IT person.
Awesome.
And Shawn, maybe tell us for a couple seconds here about your business and what you're running into.
Okay, so I'm actually providing fractional CIO or Chief Information Officer or interim IT leadership. So really, I've been in IT. I spent 12 years in the CIO role with a manufacturing company, and then the company was sold, and I was offered a buyout package. So I've really been doing fractional, I think, since about April or May. I really went on the Voyageur course and decided to really focus on fractional.
How's it going?
I've got one gig for a nonprofit, more of a technical support, but in terms of the fractional role, I've had a number of conversations. I think with me, it's really keeping that networking going. And the email campaigns, I really haven't brought that up to the level where I'm sending biweekly or monthly email updates. And that's really, I want to move to a MailChimp or HubSpot. I don't want to start with one tool and then 2 weeks later switch to something else. I'd rather just start with one. As Dave says, put all your eggs in the one basket, but really make sure it's a good basket.
Yeah, absolutely.
To get going on that.
David Shriner-Cahn, do you have any thoughts for a fractional IT CIO type who's newish to becoming fractional?
Yeah, it depends on what the challenges are. I would say one thing you could think about is what business model would be most suitable to your lifestyle needs. So Shawn just mentioned 2 different models. One is a fractional CIO, and the other is an interim IT leader. So you could become a full-time leader where you on an interim basis, where it will be that the company that is going to bring you on needs somebody really badly, like they need somebody yesterday for a specific reason. So it could be that the previous person has suddenly left. There's been some unplanned circumstances, or sometimes it happens when there's someone who's in a position for a very long time, like somebody is in 20, 25 years, and they know that person is leaving, but since that person's been there for so long, it's hard to figure out what the next person should actually be like. And so having an interim can provide a little buffer so they can figure it out while somebody is actually performing the role. But being a full-time interim leader is a very different business model than having, let's say, 3 or 5 or 10 fractional clients, where you're kind of spread out, but you have consistency in terms of, you're not going to be losing all your clients all at once and having to bring on new clients all at once. So one thing to think about when you're going from longtime employee to new fractional leader is what kind of business model is going to be most important for you to support your lifestyle.
You can see in Shawn's picture, his lifestyle contains a dog and going outdoors. So Shawn comes from the Midwest, but also I think, David, what a lot of people don't realize is there's a national footprint available to you here. And I know a lot of fractional pros of all disciplines that work across the country and quite honestly go across oceans. I think the world has said, I need the brains, I don't need the proximity. And Shawn, keep that in mind as you sort of work on your CRM and who you target, because there's need across the globe. It's just connecting those dots. So good stuff, Shawn. Shawn, any more questions or thoughts on that?
No, I appreciate all the input. And Dave,
Yeah.
I think you make I think, going early on, I've got a bigger net cast though, but the IT leader, I'd take that. I mean, if something found available, and I've actually had conversations with a couple people I know with companies that had those exact situations. But I think once I start that fractional role and have some clients, then that IT leader role is going to come off the plate.
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
focus on the fractional.
You bet. One thing I'll encourage everybody who's listening and everybody who's watching is there's being a fractional professional and having a CRM that works on that and building referability around that. I do so much of this when I work with people one-to-one, and that is get to the point where you can really articulate your superpower. It's really hard for someone to say you're fractional and I got 5 fractional people looking at, so you're the one. You're a fractional, COO, so you're the one. You're still in a competitive set. Now it's a smaller competitive set, and the buying advantage to the customer is very big because you just cost so much less. But it's really good to go in and really think about what your superpower is. What do you, across the arc of your career, not the last place you worked or not even the last project that you finished, but what is that superpower? And I will tell you, everybody, it's funny. Everybody has one, but it's a little bit of work to get that out. And boy, once you do, you're connecting their need to what you're good at.
Yeah.
So
I can layer onto that for a second, John.
Yeah.
As you iterate or figure out what your superpower is, make sure that you keep your intended customer in mind, because you need to decode that for them. You can say, I am able to synthesize the right IT solution to save my customers money because I've been in the business for 25 years and I've had experience across a broad swath of communities. But that's a little bit too centered on you. What you want to focus on is what the pain that you solve that person is going to be. So I save you money and help you avoid the common pitfalls that not having dedicated IT exposes you to.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting right to what they need, what the pain point is for them, and how you solve it. So your superpower, make sure that you have that in crystal focus, but also make sure that you're translating it for your customer, and not only your intended buyer. And that buyer might not be the owner of a company. It might be the purchasing agent. It might be the HR consultant. It might be the COO of that company, or it might be an influencer of that group. There might be a task force at your target size businesses that has specific questions. So you want to make sure that you're answering those and becoming their best friend. If you can make your contact, your influencer, look good to their boss, you just won the deal.
Yeah. And as you guys know me, my superpower is snack sizing big ideas. And I obsess over that. And since you're talking about that, Dave Meyer, there's somebody I've gotten to know in this last couple of years. Her name is Sherry Tree. And then here in this market, a woman named Michelle LaFrance. And they come from the Why They Buy universe. And the whole idea there is to really get good at understanding the other side of the table. And Michelle, she'll be a guest, and hopefully we'll have Sherry on. And what I love about that, because I have a small brain, I'm not super smart, so I need things packed down into small but snack sizes anyway. But you got this whole concept of really understanding the other side of the table. And Sherry, they do a good job of really breaking down the psychology. But there's 4 little cards, and it says, here's what's on the other side of the table. And I swear to God, if you just keep those handy and understand what's on the other side of the table, you'll do better. Guys, talk for a little minute about, and when people are fractional, how to avoid talking so much about themselves. That's hard to do. And anchoring on the other side of the table. David Shriner-Cahn, maybe you can talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, one way to do it is to force yourself every time you start speaking to frame whatever you're saying in the form of a question, which is likely to prompt the other party to speak more than you are.
Frame your question, frame your thoughts in the form of a question. Did I get that right?
Right, right. So, as an example, you just asked me to speak about how to speak less. So I could say to you, instead of the answer that I just gave you, I could say, well, John, what are some examples of when you've seen somebody speak too much?
Oh boy.
Right. And then all of a sudden I'm starting to learn about your pain points.
Right.
That's smart.
Hmm.
That's wise.
How many times have people talk themselves out of a sale when they're with a customer? They just keep yapping and yapping and yapping, and all of a sudden the person they're trying to work with is like, ooh, maybe this isn't somebody that I want to work with.
Yeah, you can, particularly when you're, we're talking about fractional leaders. So fractional leaders are selling their ideas and their expertise. When you're selling ideas and expertise, the best kind of sales is consultative sales. So you want to be guiding the prospective client towards a solution where you're going to be part of the solution. But if all you do in the process is keep asking them questions that will help them understand where they need to go, the sale is going to be relatively easy if you're a good fit.
Right. It's the magic of the consultative sale, right? So
you
ask all of those questions and get them to start selling them on you through their answers, right? I mean, we can ask questions, of course, but what's better in a, let's pretend that the world still allowed cocktail parties, right? You go to a cocktail party and you're at the table. Are you more likely to gravitate towards the person that's standing in the corner and bloviating on about themselves and their deal and what they did and what they ate for breakfast and all that stuff? Or are you more likely to be engaged and have fun with someone that asks you interesting questions about yourself and makes you feel special? It's the same thing in business, right?
The question answers itself there, doesn't it?
Yeah. And people do business with those they know, like, trust, and think care about them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Carol asked a quick question. Can you please say those ladies' names again? RE, why they buy?
Sure. The author is Sherry Tree, and I'll type it. Dave, if I type it in the magical chat box, will it show up?
To everyone in the chat box, yes.
Okay, I'm going to do that. I'll put that in there for everybody in a second. So
great.
While I do that, Dave, keep going.
I'd love to hear from more folks. So I know Molly was on a webinar with me a couple days ago, and that's, I think, why she's here. And she was not shy at all on that webinar. And it was so fantastic to hear from her and her challenges. So Molly, if you'd like to chat, feel free to raise your hand. Melissa, if you want a guest shot at your guest speaking and to weigh in on our conversation, or I can just unmute everybody and we can go to town. And sometimes that's a little dangerous because if you're on a webinar and all of a sudden you're unmuted, you could be, playing. If Shawn was still hanging out with the dog outside, we'd be able to hear that. But I would love.
Arf.
Yes, right. Let's go to callers.
So who wants in? I'm going to call Carol out. So I'm going to call in Jan, Melissa, Molly, Tim. Tim's never shy either. Who wants to chat?
I'm just, while we're waiting for that, I'm just putting in the chat box to everybody, Sherry, the book, and then a link to Michelle LaFrance, who's very versed in that skill set. You'll find her LinkedIn profile here. So,
okay, Tim's on. Tim's ready to talk.
I'm ready to talk. I'm sure you want to let me talk. And John and I just got done with a 45-minute webinar before this. And so I guess it's my turn to talk now, right, John?
You bet. You bet.
No, everything you're saying is great. I think a lot of people need to hear it more and more that the fractional world is a different mindset. And so you kind of got to train yourself from what you learned in corporate. And at the end of the day, this is all about taking your knowledge and skill sets and being able to figure out what kind of problems you can go fix. And it really is that simple, but the problem is that's not why most people have been trained, or most people have been taught, that they learned in corporate America for 30, 40 years. So and the fear of the unknown is a big thing, because most people, when I talk to them about this, they go, well, I just want to let you know, I don't want to start a business. And my next thing is, when did I ever say starting a business? I never even said that. I just said you need to understand that you're ignoring 99% of the market, because most of the people we talk to in the Twin Cities here have worked for the large corporations, and they're all C-suite level people. And the thing about it is, if you want the same thing you had, you got to stay in there. But that's always going to be the most competitive market. But if you want to go out where there's more opportunities than there are people, then you have to, the fractional world is the place to go. So
Tim, you're touching on a key thing there that I think a lot of people on the outside of this need to know, and that is, where are the macro trends in fractional? There's a lot of opportunity here, but our history as a workforce, for the most part, for the last 75 years, has anchored to a pretty large corporation and a pretty stable job. And we built an economy around that. And now we're in the middle of a transition point. We're working our way up the arc on a new model of that. And, by the millions, people, what was it last year, guys? 4.3 million people were part of the Great Resignation. No, that was this year. I don't know. Anyway, it was very recent, right? And so we got a lot of people leaving saying that model doesn't work for me. We got a lot of other people who are being laid off. So on the demand side, the model doesn't work. There's a lot of tectonic plate shifting here. And maybe I'll go back to you, David Shriner-Cahn, and maybe talk about the macro trends that are at play here.
I can talk about the trends when it comes, I don't know about trends, but some of the statistics when it comes to layoffs. One of the things, and frankly, I've been in this area now for a number of years. And when I started to dig into the statistics, I was surprised. If you're over the age of 50, you have more than a 50% likelihood that you are going to experience an unexpected job termination. That's a pretty daunting statistic to me. So when it comes to layoffs, I think that's a pretty big number. The other thing to consider is there's a lot of age discrimination in the workplace. We know it's illegal. We know that it is unethical, and we also know that it exists. So I can't tell you how many people I've interviewed on my shows who say to me, I was the best qualified candidate. I had all the I's were dotted, all the T's were crossed, and they hired somebody who was 20 years younger and cheaper. Even though the budget for the position would have fit what I was asking for. So that it's very common. And so one of the trends is employers are I would say in some ways short-sighted, because the need for the level of skill that senior fractional leaders have is there, but the pressure is on to meet quarterly financial statistics, which I think force a lot of companies to be short-sighted in terms of managing talent. And so you see ageism playing out, and you see younger people being tasked with roles that they may not be equipped to handle, and you see older workers being pushed out. So that's one of the areas where the plan B for the worker is really important. On the flip side, if you're still in the company and you've been part of pushing people out, you also need a plan B to be able to get the work done. And so relying on fractional leaders is something you could also keep in mind. One of the things that I've heard over and over again from my podcast guests, those that have gone solo, is when I've left my company, even though I was fired, my first consulting client was my last employer. So, and we know that relationships are really important in this kind of work. So if you're still employed and you think the exit door may be shown to you, keep in mind that even though you might be angry, don't burn any bridges, because your previous employer might actually need the skills and be willing to pay you, maybe even on a higher hourly level, to get the job done. And that could help you kind of bootstrap your fractional business.
Yeah, and I've seen the same statistics, David, is, if you're over 50, it's not looking great. And that creates a lot of fear. For a lot of people, it's not looking great. And ageism that comes to play. And I'll stop for a minute and encourage everybody, please go to David's podcast, Smashing the Plateau, and tune in, because you're going to hear things like this from people who are in this world on I think it's still weekly, isn't it, David?
Yeah. So I have two shows, Smashing the Plateau and Going Solo.
Yeah.
Each show is a weekly show. So we have 2 episodes in total coming out every week.
Yeah.
Smashing the Plateau, we focus more on people that have created consulting businesses that reach some level of sustainability. They're trying to grow or become more efficient. And Going Solo is about that initial stage when you feel like you're walking on thin ice, just trying to get started.
Yeah, you're very tender and very, very vulnerable, and maybe not feeling your most confident. And those are definitely two distinct things. Those are different chapters in Voyageur, and they're distinct things. For the ageism piece, because we really get asked that a lot, and that comes up quite a bit. And here's what I would like to say. I'll just share something that I coach people on all the time, and that is the value you're putting back in the market as a fractional, wherever you are in that, is if you take 30 years and you've been working for 30 years, that means for 30 years, you've been learning. You're on a 30-year track of learning, and a 30-year track of failing, and a 30-year track of succeeding, and a 30-year track of making relationships and everything else. So your value is in that. That's what needs to redeploy in the market. And David, there's a reason, businesses look at that and they're looking at, can you do this function? Can you do this scope? Can you do this little thing? And how cheap can I get it? That's where ageism really shows up, right? I want you for cheaper. To flip that around and say, well, all that 30 years of all that wonderfulness, if I can package that and really understand it and articulate it, there are businesses in the small business side of the economy that are dying for that. They really are. They need that wisdom. They need those failures. They don't need to know that you've got an MBA. You've got 30 MBAs 1 year at a time. And so if anything on the ageism thing, my hope in the next few years is to really reposition that conversation and say, we've been thinking about it all wrong. Those who are older have more value than ever. It's 30 years of anything. I'll give you an example. If I have to go in and have heart surgery, do I want the person who comes for the cheapest, or I want the guy who's done 50 heart surgeries a year for the last 30 years? The question answers itself.
Right. And how much is he going to get paid for that heart surgery that's going to take him a few hours to perform?
Yeah. A lot.
If I can give a little color, as I've grown BusyWeb through the years, we were battling a lot with the cheapest folks a lot. And then we shifted our focus to companies that were in a different phase of their growth periods. Mm-hmm. And so if you find a lot of that, well, I'm just looking for somebody as cheap as possible, you might be looking in the wrong market or at a set of companies that are in the wrong phase of their journey. Startups, people that are just getting started, which is kind of tough for us to not identify with, because that's where we tend to be if we're going into fractional, right? If you're looking at startups, they're scrappy. They don't have any money. You're taking dollars out of their kids' college fund to build that business, right? So there's just not a lot of elasticity in them to invest well in their business. But if you find businesses and you work with businesses that have gotten to that phase where they're making money and they're struggling to scale, that's an entirely different conversation. They realize, holy, David's been doing this for 30 years, or Tim's been doing this for 20 years, and I need someone that has that experience because I can't afford to screw around anymore.
You really can't.
And that's the kind of people that you need to look for. So try shifting your focus in the kinds of businesses that you're reaching or that you're connecting with. And then you might see some more success with people that are more friendly to people that have hair in the color of everybody that's listed on screen right now. So
you guys got the nice beards going. I feel like I need to grow a beard just so I can be cool like you two guys.
oh goodness.
Yeah, I'll get there. I'll get there. There's somebody we have on the call, Melissa Hefner, and I don't know if she's still listening or is able to come up, but Melissa has a career in HR and probably has some ins and outs on why that is so difficult right now. And Melissa, I wonder if I can ask you to sort of chime in on this and tell us give us some intelligence on why it's, I don't know, why it's such a shit show right now in HR.
Yeah, I'm here. This is Melissa. I was just thinking, ageism saying hits home. Being in HR, I will say it certainly is alive and well. And if I had a nickel for every hiring manager that wanted somebody greener, more junior, malleable, trainable, I wouldn't have to be working now, I think. I wouldn't be here. I'd be
Tell
off
us
on
more.
a beach. And yeah, it's so true. And I'm really, I've been, trying to fight against that for years and really help that inside of companies. Now, I think my perspective on it, just a little something that I hope is helpful now, I'm really trying to leverage with my potential clients that I have a body of work. I have things that I've already done and created. I can do something in probably a half an hour that someone greener might take all day or all week to figure out. So that's, I don't know, I'm pretty new to the fractional model myself, but that's something that I'm really trying to highlight when I have conversations.
Melissa, where on the demand side of that, like for people who are saying, I have a gap and I need it filled, are they struggling with defining that? Are they, are there old norms that they're dealing with? Why is it so messy?
Why is it so hard to fill roles, you think? Or
it seems from what I hear on this side of it, fractional is looking for roles. And even people who are laid off that have been looking on the job search, it's like, my God, this is craziness. I submit 50 resumes and the job description is vague and it's asking for a 55-year-old person with a 22-year-old salary. The lump sum is people are pretty frustrated in connecting those dots and it seems messy.
The applicants are frustrated?
For sure. What's on the other side? What about the employers?
Inside of a company, I think that things are moving so fast and companies are busy and understaffed and there's maybe not an emphasis being put on that almost training of the hiring manager.
Okay.
And
sure.
refining and improving the hiring process, the recruiting process. I just had a client which I would say isn't my ideal fractional client. I was in an interim role recently, where we did a ton of work on the recruiting process, and it needs to be so much timelier now. People are, it's hard to find the right people, and people are moving along quickly to other opportunities because there's such a need out there. So if you're not doing it right, you're losing out as an employer. But
Right.
I think a lot of hiring managers don't see that. So it's that lack of kind of HR and recruiting to be training those hiring managers in a way. Yeah, it's a frustration when you're in that HR or recruiting role. Oftentimes executives or hiring managers are doing so many other things, but then they're changing their mind constantly about what they want in a role.
Oh my gosh.
You see that so frequently.
Nothing like good changing minds by the minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want this. Wait a minute. Wait 5 minutes. Now I want that. The price is this. Wait a minute. Now the price is that.
Sure. Absolutely.
Maybe that's the nature. Sorry, go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, just saying now I've put, I brought in 4 great people for you to see. And, yeah, now it's, yeah, they're not right. Now it's something different. Absolutely.
Oh.
Quickly.
That's why, and you got to add speed to it. And that's why, yeah, geez, craziness. Mr. Khan, do you have any thoughts on that? What's happening there?
Yeah, but before I answer the question, I'm not sure how long these typically go, but I need to run in about 2 minutes.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll take 2 minutes of your time, and we're going to actually go probably over a little bit. It doesn't have to end on the hour, but
I know Jan had a
totally
question
respect your
going
time. Yep.
as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think it's really complicated for HR professionals because you're sort of caught in the middle. You may see things that you believe should be done a certain way, but the CEO is the one that sets the tone and creates the culture and sets the decision-making process in play. And you're tasked with carrying it out and making sure that everything is done properly. Especially with regard to ageism, there are lots of ways that ageism plays out without people inside a company doing things that they can be that would be held up in a court of law as illegal. And I'm not an attorney, but
Sure.
I think everybody knows what I mean. So yeah, as an HR professional, you're really caught in the middle with this. And I have a lot of empathy for what you're trying to do.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Well, before you go, David, but if everybody could please stay on, but David, I'd like to thank you for your time and your insight today, and ask you to come back another time, but you've helped a lot of fractionals today, and tell us just what's the next big adventure for you, David?
So we've just launched a new membership community for consultants and coaches that are building their business following a late career job loss. So I think there's some similarity to what you're doing with Voyageur U. It's our specialty. It's not specifically fractional folks, but folks that are consulting in multiple kinds of business models, but to try to overcome the isolation that you experience when you leave the corporate structure, which has this built-in social, both formal and informal social structure. When you go out on your own, you're very isolated. And you talked a little bit about fear, John. So fear is a big impediment to growth. But when you spend time with like-minded people, you can overcome that. And of course, we'll continue to podcast. Our podcasts are available at smashingtheplateau.com. And if anybody watching or listening or checking out the recording wants to be a guest, we look for consultants that become consultants following 20 plus years as an employee, particularly higher level people. So if that's something that would be of interest to you and you want to get your message out via being on my shows, please get in touch with me. I'm active on LinkedIn. You can go to smashingtheplateau.com and send me a message there as well.
And we'll post that into our community as well, David. There's over 200 people there that might give you a call tomorrow, so be ready. So thank you, David, and we look forward to having you back on. And I look forward to being a guest on your show. I know it's scheduled. It's coming up.
Yes, it is. Thank you again, John. Thanks, Dave, and thanks everybody who's watching.
Thanks, guys.
That was great. Dave, Meyer.
Yes, sir.
That was fantastic.
What a fun gig. Thanks for everybody that was brave enough to hop on and to chat. Thanks for everybody for being in the chat window. Remember, we're doing these every Friday. And so we're going to be off for 2 weeks over the holidays, but next Friday is on. And John, I don't have it in front of me. I should have. This is one of those things where I'm going to be embarrassed after we've done this for a couple of years. But we have a new guest coming up next week. And we're going to publish that through our network, through our LinkedIn. So if you're not connected with either John or I, we're pretty easy to find on all of the networks. But gosh, this was tremendous fun. I really appreciate you, Mr. Arms, and everything.
Likewise.
And it's so fun to chat with people that are super smart and super passionate about making their way. And that's why I love working with the Voyageur community and helping support.
So everybody join us next week. We're going to pick up another key topic in this whole fractional small biz world. We'll probably push into what we talked to a little bit more today, CRMs, but please join us and please spread the word. The more people we can help in the fractional world and the small business, the better our economy gets. So thanks everybody for coming. And Dave, we're signing off.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend. See you next Friday.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.